He was the dog nobody wanted. Day after day, families walked right past him. He sat quietly in his cage, watching, waiting, hoping. But no one ever stopped. Too old, too quiet, too serious. Everyone had an excuse. The dog remained alone, rejected over and over again. But then one man knelt down and noticed something everyone else had completely overlooked. A small tag hanging from his collar. The moment he read what was written there, everything changed. What happened next left everyone in that shelter absolutely stunned. In a noisy animal shelter filled with barking and wagging tails, one dog sat silently in the far corner. His fur was black with patches of gray around his muzzle, and his eyes were soft but deeply tired. While the other dogs jumped against their kennel doors and barked for attention, he simply sat still, head lowered. Families came through the shelter every single day. Parents with excited children pointed eagerly at the puppies who bounced with energy. Young couples smiled at the playful dogs whose tails never stopped wagging. People wanted dogs that were full of life. Cute, easy to love. No one even paused near the quiet dog in the corner. The shelter staff called him Max. He'd been there for months. Whenever someone asked about him, the answer was always the same. He's gentle. But he's older. Doesn't play much anymore. As soon as people heard that, they moved on to look at younger dogs. And Max's heart seemed to break a little more each time. Day after day, Max watched as dogs around him left with new families while his kennel door stayed locked. His food bowl was always filled. The staff took care of him. But it wasn't the same. What he wanted more than anything was for someone to notice him. To choose him. To take him home. Max wasn't aggressive. He wasn't sick. He was simply quiet. As if carrying a heavy sadness deep inside that no one could see. The shelter workers often whispered about him when they thought no one was listening. He's a good dog, one would say. But nobody wants a dog who looks that sad. Their words were true. Most people wanted happy, energetic pets. Whenever children walked past his kennel, Max would slowly lift his head, his brown eyes following them with quiet hope. But the moment they ran toward another dog, his head would drop again. His tail hardly ever wagged anymore. It was as if he'd already given up on being chosen. The truth was, none of the families who visited knew Max's story. They didn't know why his eyes looked so empty or why he never barked for attention. To them, he was just an old dog with nothing left to offer. But there was something even the shelter workers hadn't noticed. Hanging from Max's faded blue collar was a small, round metal tag. Most people assumed it was just an old name tag, scratched and unreadable. But that tiny tag carried a secret. One that explained why Max sat so quietly, waiting. And one day, a man would finally read it. That moment would change everything. One quiet afternoon, a man named David walked into the shelter. He wasn't there looking for a puppy to play with or a fancy dog to impress anyone. He just wanted a loyal companion. A friend to share his quiet life with. The shelter was loud with barking, the sound of tails thumping against metal, and children laughing as they pointed at dogs. David walked slowly through the rows of cages, taking his time. Most dogs jumped up immediately, barking and wagging their tails, desperate to be noticed. But then his eyes landed on Max. The old dog sitting silently in the corner. Max didn't bark, didn't jump. He just looked up with those deep, tired eyes. Something about that look stopped David in his tracks. He knelt down slowly in front of the kennel. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Max slowly lifted his head and shuffled closer, pressing his nose gently against the bars. It was a small gesture, but it was enough. David felt his chest tighten. "Hey, buddy," David whispered softly. "Why isn't anyone choosing you?" His hand rested against the bars, and Max leaned into them, as if trying to soak in even the smallest bit of affection. As David's eyes drifted lower, he noticed something hanging from Max's collar. A small, scratched metal tag. Curious, he leaned in closer. The words were faint, but they were still there. He reached out carefully, turning the tag between his fingers. The moment his eyes read the message engraved on it, David froze completely. David's hands trembled as he held the small, worn tag between his fingers. The letters were scratched and faded, but still clear enough to read. His eyes moved slowly across the words, and with each line, his chest grew tighter. It said, "If you're reading this, I am no longer here. Please give Max a good home. He was my best friend." David blinked hard, his throat tightening. Suddenly, everything made sense. The sadness in Max's eyes. The way he sat so quietly, as if waiting for someone who would never return. Max hadn't been abandoned because he was unwanted. He had been deeply loved. But his owner had passed away. A shelter worker noticed David staring at the tag and nodded gently. "We found him wandering the streets. No family came forward. We think his owner died, just like the tag says. Since then, no one's wanted him. Too old. Too quiet." David looked at Max again. The old dog pressed closer against the kennel door, his eyes searching David's face as if asking, "Will you be the one?" Tears filled David's eyes. He couldn't imagine the loyalty Max must have shown to his first owner, or the heartbreak of losing him. In that moment, David knew Max wasn't just another shelter dog. He was carrying a story, the bond, and a final wish left behind. And David realized he was holding the power to fulfill it. If this story touches your heart, please share it with someone who needs a reminder that love never expires. David stayed kneeling in front of Max's kennel, his heart heavy. The message on the tag kept echoing in his mind. Please give Max a good home. He imagined the years of love between Max and his late owner. The loyalty, and the pain of being left alone after losing the person he trusted most. The shelter worker spoke gently. "You don't have to decide right now. A lot of people think old dogs are too much work." But David shook his head, his eyes never leaving Max. "He's not work. He's just waiting for someone to believe in him again." Slowly, David reached through the bars, and Max pressed his head into his hand. For the first time, Max's tail gave a faint wag. Almost uncertain. That tiny movement was enough to bring a smile to David's face and tears to his eyes. "I'll take him," David said firmly. "He deserves to be loved again. If no one else wants him, I do." The worker's eyes softened, and she nodded. Paperwork was brought out, and the process began. As the kennel door finally opened, Max stepped out carefully, as though afraid it was all just a dream. But when David clipped the leash onto his collar, Max looked up with quiet trust, ready to follow his new friend home. When David brought Max home, the old dog walked through the door slowly, sniffing every corner as if unsure he was really allowed to stay. His steps were cautious. But his eyes seemed brighter than they had in months. David placed a soft blanket near the fireplace and set down a bowl of fresh food. Max hesitated for just a moment, then began to eat, his tail wagging a little stronger this time. Over the next few days, a transformation began. Max, who had once sat silently in the shelter, started following David around the house. He lay at his feet when David read, rested his head on David's lap when he watched television. At night, Max curled up beside the bed, letting out soft sighs of comfort, as if he finally felt safe again. Neighbors who saw them walking together noticed the change quickly. "That dog looks happy again," one remarked. David would smile and reply, "He's not just a dog. He's family." One evening, David held Max's tag in his hand again, reading the words one more time. He whispered, "Don't worry. Your first owner's wish came true. Your love, and you're home." Max lifted his head, eyes shining, and wagged his tail as if he understood every single word. Sometimes the ones everyone rejects are the ones who end up giving us the greatest love of all. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible true stories that remind us why second chances and final wishes matter more than we'll ever know.